Hello, everyone. My name is Jared Leopard. I am the founder and lead engineer of Club Can Hear Studios. It's an online-based mixing and mastering studio. Artists and producers send me their songs, and I make them sound really good. Today, we have two questions, both of them from Taijitu. I hope I'm saying that right, Taijitu. The first question is how to keep stems organized, and how to group them, and is there a certain dB level that we need to have when sending these stems? The second question is how to get that pro sound. That's a very big question. If there was a simple answer, I would totally give it to you, but that's a pretty complicated question. But I'll do my best to give you a good summary. But let's go over the first question right now. The first question is how to keep your stems organized. So what I have here is actually Taijitu's Ableton project. He sent me stems, and you did a really good job of organizing them, actually. These are all of your stems right here that you sent me. I just went ahead and I labeled them all on the side. Going over stems, for example, a good grouping example is let's say you have a dull lead and a pad in the same stem. You should be able to slightly boost the top end without the pad becoming horribly prominent in the mix. So that's why we kind of group things together. A bad grouping example is, let's say you have a sweep with a piercing top end in the same stem as a dull lead. You're not going to be able to boost the top end of the lead, as it will make the sweep even more piercing. If you want to tame the sweep, it will make the lead even more dull. So that's why we group things together, because it's going to give a mastering engineer more control. So for example, I like to have clients and artists send me anywhere between 5 and 8 stem bounces, and Taijitu sent me 7, I believe. Yeah, 7. And the number 1 and number 2 rule is, number 1 rule, always bounce your kick solo. You always want the kick by itself. The second rule is your bass, and that also needs to always be by itself. These two are really important because kick and bass are notoriously difficult to work on for mixing engineers and for mastering engineers and for bedroom producers and anyone anywhere, because a lot of the times the rooms that you're producing in, your bedroom studio, your makeshift studio, in the attic or wherever it is poorly treated, and there's a lot of bass energy buildup in the corners of your room, and it gives you a false representation of what it is that you are actually hearing, because most of the times what you're hearing is not an actual representation of that true lower bass frequency, and it's just kind of the built up energy in certain corners that are just blasting your ears away. So that's why we keep things, the kick and the 808, always by itself. They're always going to be by themselves, because it's going to give people like me a lot more control to work over these two. So let's listen to what Taijitu has just with his kick and his bass. He gave me his kick soloed and the bass soloed. That's basically the two most important things that you're going to want to have by themselves. Anything after that, you can group together, your drum tops, like your snares and claps can be together, your hi-hats and cymbals and percussions, things like that can be together. You can group together your effects risers, like sweeps and sub drops and things like that. And then you can also group together your vocals, which he did here, in the lead and the backing too. So a lot of the times clients and artists will send me their vocals, and what they'll do is they'll send me their lead vocal, but then they'll send me the 10 other backing vocals with all the ad libs and things like that. What you're going to want to do is, if you're doing a stem mastering, you're going to want to group all of the vocals together and just make one pretty neat file of all those vocals. There's a lot of information out there of how to do your stem masterings and how to bounce them. This is just a really quick way to kind of show you the basics of it. The basics is bounce your kick solo, bounce your 808 solo, and then after that, group similar sounding instruments together and bounce those. Moving on to the second question, we have how to get that pro sound. Wow, if I could answer that in one sentence, I totally would. How to get that pro sound? A lot of it is going to be in your mixing phase. And what you could do is what I did was you sent me pictures of your mastering presets, the signal chain that you had, which is here. And what I did is I tried to recreate it the best that I could in my own Ableton project. And I'm just gonna go over really quickly, like 5 minutes, the shortcut to a pro sound. I hope we'll cross our fingers. What I did is I rearranged some of your devices, and what you had here was you had a multi-band dynamics on the first insert, basically, of your signal flow. And what that tells me is that if you have to put a multi-band dynamics as the first device, the first thing in your signal flow, then there's a problem, and you need to fix that problem. And that problem isn't going to be fixed very well here in multi-band dynamics. It's going to be fixed in your actual mix. So first thing I would do is I would actually get rid of the multi-band dynamics, and I would move this EQ8 over to the very first thing in your signal flow, which is what I did here. And the very first thing that I did in my signal flow is I put it into mid-side mode, which is done here, put it into side, and then I put a high-pass filter on it, and I just rolled off some of the side information up to around 70 hertz. That's what sounded best to me. Following up on that, what you did later down on your mastering chain, which is seen here, you have ozone, and ozone is inserted very far. It's actually the very last thing in your mastering chain. And what you have is you have an EQ, and you have a brick wall EQ taking out some of your low end. And I just want to say that since we're going here, the very first insert of our mastering chain, and we're rolling off some of our side information, that's kind of unnecessary to do. So what you can do is actually you can get rid of that and just take care of your low end, the very first thing in your mastering chain. Just take care of that, the first thing. What I did was I put that in mid side, rolled off some sides, and then following up with that, I took off the very low, subby, muddy, messy low end with just a normal EQ in stereo. And what this is doing, these two guys right here, you're going to do this on almost all of your masters, honestly. And what this is doing is it's just making it's cleaning up your low end of your bass. It's getting rid of those muddy frequencies that speakers and headphones and a lot of car stereos have a hard time recreating because it's just so low. Like, it's so difficult to recreate things that are, way down at 20 hertz or something like that. And so that helps us by giving us a cleaner bass signal to boost into our limiter. So basically by cleaning up our low end, the very first thing that we do on our mastering process, it's already going to clean up the signal and give a cleaner signal to our limiter, which in turn is going to give us a louder master. So just by doing these two things right away, you're already on your way to getting a better, quote, pro sounding master by cleaning up the low end in the sides, cleaning it up also in stereo, and giving the limiter a cleaner signal to be boosting. After that, you had a glue compressor and a saturator, and let me just say, you had a lot of the right ideas. You absolutely you have all the right tools on your mastering chain. It's just that the order that they're in isn't necessarily the right way, and it's kind of hard to say that there's a right way and a wrong way to do things, because it's kind of like, well, if it sounds good, it sounds good. But in my experience, if you arrange your plugins and your EQs and your compressors and things like that in a certain way, you're gonna make your life a lot easier by working on your song, and your end result is gonna be a lot better as well. So what I would do is, instead of going EQ8 with the mid side into your glue compressor, I would EQ8 into your saturator, which is what I did here. So we took out our subs, we took out the muddy messiness low ends, and we're putting that right into our saturator, which is then followed up with our glue compressor. And then I moved your multiband dynamics down a little bit further, because if you wanted to, you could get a little bit more squeeze out of your low end and your mid lows. But that's entirely up to you and the mastering engineer to see how they fit. So I just kind of put that there for an example. And then quickly after that, you showed me you had exciter, and exciter is another saturator. And what's saturation doing? Saturation is adding harmonics, and it's adding harmonics in little tiny different layers. It's replicating layers of whatever the original sound source was. So it's adding color and richness and warmth to the sound. And when you're doing a mastering, I wouldn't recommend using Ableton's saturator, because Ableton's saturator is very colorful. And during our mastering process, a lot of the plugins and the tools that we use, we want them to be very transparent, because we don't want to take the song that we perfected, that sounds, mixed down the most beautiful way that we love it, and then we don't want to mess that all up by adding these super colorful, rich plugins that really change the way that it sounds. So what we're going to do is we're going to choose plugins for the mastering process that are very transparent, and plugins from Sound Toys, Fab Filter, Ozone's great too. We're going to use those instead. So instead of using this saturator, you have this one on already, the exciter. I would get rid of the saturator here, and I would just use this one. And then I would also take it out of mid side, stick it into stereo, and use the tape mode. And try not to add too much to the lows or the low mids, because then that's going to start making it sound more stereo. And if you're going to play it in a club or car, it's going to make it sound a little bit weaker. I like to keep my basses and my mid lows very mono, so that when you play it on any system or any source, it's going to knock, like, no matter where you go. It's going to be like a really hard hitting track. You could definitely add your exciter, your saturation to your mids and your mid highs. And then after that, what did you have? Is this an image? Yeah, an imager. Imager is really cool as well. Imager is going to help you get that little bit extra width from your song. But I wanted to show you something that you were doing. You're kind of doing a negative result. You're canceling these two things out. On your exciter, you're boosting your mid information on your kick and bass, basically. And then at the same time, immediately following up that, you're decreasing it. You're setting it into mono. So what you could do to get a better and cleaner sound is just get rid of this amount. Just put it on 0. Just don't touch it. And then you can go here. -50 is pretty intense for a mono signal. Just start off with like 10 up to 20. See how that sounds first. What I did was I did a quick master on your song, and I just basically dragged the stems. I bounced the stems into one master file, and I put it into my signal flow, my mastering chain that I have set up. So just so you can hear the difference, here I'm going to show you yours and mine, and you can kind of hear how when you do the mastering signal flow in the right way, it really makes a huge difference. Just the way that you order your devices and your plugins is dramatically going to change the way that the outcome sounds. And so basically what I did was I ran it through the order that I have things, and you can hear the difference in yours. Let's go here. Right now, this is your song. And then we're going to change it over to mine. basically, we'll play that second part or the third part later. You had all the right ideas. You're using all of the right tools and plugins, but you're just using them kind of in the wrong order. There's exceptions to the rules always. You know, if it sounds good, it sounds good. But I find that 90% of the time, if I follow a certain signal flow, you know, start with my reductive EQ, take out some of those low ends, you know, give the limiter a cleaner signal to start boosting, then I'm going to be able to get a louder master out of it. And then that louder master is going to, you know, stack up better with whatever commercial releases are out there. Using a more transparent saturator. If it's too colorful, then things are going to sound crunchy and, you know, messy. So I just wanted to say, really nice job on the song. The song is really, really cool. And again, you're using you have all the right ideas. Just try to change around the order of them. And if you have questions about that, feel free to ask me. Just change around the order of them. And you're going to find that you're going to consistently get a lot better, a lot cleaner, just really, really nice results following a certain signal flow. If anyone has any questions about that, that was the like 5 to 7 minute quick rundown of a pro sounding master. I hope that helps, and I'll be around in the discussion, so please ask me anything. See you guys around. Bye.